Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Christopher Rodriguez. I handle marketing and communications for Eris Exchange, and I'll be your moderator today. Welcome to today's webinar about margin analytics with our partners from Cassini, in which we'll be discussing our progress at Eris, providing a trading update, diving into how we can show you ways to reduce initial margins by novating your OTC swap positions into Eris, and many other things. All participants on today's webinar will be muted. We'll be addressing questions at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session. As questions come up, please type them into the GoToWebinar software. Lastly, we'll be recording today's presentation, and we'll circulate the replay to all registrants later today. Now I will introduce our presenters. Jeff Sharp, Head of Sales at Eris Exchange, and Liam Huxley, Founder of Cassini and CEO. So without further delay, let me turn it over to Jeff to kick it off.
Thank you, Chris. Before we review our margin optimization service, let me provide a brief summary of Eris for the benefit of those new to Eris. Eris is an independent exchange regulated by the CFTC, and we have listed U.S. dollar interest rate swaps, which clear at the CME and the Futures Guarantee Fund. We have also licensed the Eris methodology to ICE Exchange for high-grade and high-yield credit default swaps, and Euro and Sterling interest rate swaps, the Montreal Exchange for Canadian dollar interest rate swaps, and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange for South African Rand interest rate swaps. At the core of Eris is our unique patent-pending contract design. This methodology exactly replicates all the cash flows of OTC swaps, permitting users of Eris to hold their positions for the life of the swap, just as in an OTC transaction. As listed and exchange-traded instruments with daily settlement prices, Eris swap futures simplify the operational complexities inherent in OTC swaps by combining all the cash flows into one daily settlement price. This means offsetting Eris versus OTC swap positions match exactly, allowing participants to port liquidity from one venue to the other. This is similar to what already occurs between CME and LCH in OTC space. And of course, being listed and exchange traded, Eris also receives favorable margin treatment. Appetite today for Eris continues to grow, and we're very excited about the present onboarding pipeline and ongoing interest in using Eris instead of or as well as OTC swaps. But we don't take the challenge for granted. Indeed, exchanges have been trying to list swaps as futures for almost 15 years. However, prior to Eris, none had successfully designed a product that exactly matches OTC cash flows and functionality. And of course, the regulatory environment has never been as challenging for the OTC market as it is today. The result is that open interest in Eris swap futures continues to climb and is near an all-time high today. As a share of the overall swap futures market, Eris represents almost 70%. Furthermore, over 70% of Eris open interest is in our low-margin two-day bar product called Eris Standards. Eris operates a central limit order book on which participants have access to live and tradable streaming markets. We recently added live markets in 3- and 4-year tenors, so live streaming markets are now available in 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, and 30-year tenors, commencing out of the front IMM date. This leads me to what Apologies, hold on one second. But the nature of the Eris methodology allows much greater yield curve granularity as our contracts remain futures contracts beyond the start date of the swap, and they remain listed contracts for the life of the underlying swap. These previously listed and now seasoned or off-the-run Eris contracts generate significant yield curve granularity in Eris swap contracts, a factor unprecedented in listed markets. In addition to front month and the seasoned off-the-run contracts, Eris has also listed contracts on swaps starting out of the next 20 IMM dates and the 41st IMM date. So one has access to a wide range of forward-starting swaps as well. And all these contracts are low-margin Eris standards. Further evidence of the success of the Eris design can be seen in this chart. This chart shows tick data from late July to early September for the Eris 5-year versus the OTC 5-year. It illustrates how a trade in Eris 5-year would have mirrored the same trade in 5-year OTC swaps. This leads me to why Eris has partnered with Cassini and the service we're showcasing today. While it might seem obvious that a more margin-efficient product produces a lower overall initial margin outcome, market participants today are faced with a complex web of new rules and regulations commanding the vast majority of internal resources. This means few have the resources to analyze margin optimization and gross notional efficiencies that can be obtained from using a product like Eris. So we are bringing you this analysis today for free. Our introductory Cassini analysis will provide you with an Eris replacement portfolio for your OTC portfolio, optimizing gross notionals and highlighting the margin savings available from using Eris. So I'll now hand you over to Liam Huxley, founder and CEO of Cassini Systems.
So, yeah, thanks, Jeff. So firstly, just to give a quick background on Cassini and who we are and the bigger product. The team behind Cassini has long experience in building both internal and vendor software for banks and asset managers. And we have now brought that experience to the challenge of providing transparency in the new derivative trading environment. The core ideas behind the creation of Cassini are firstly, to provide visibility of back office costs and constraints into the front office trading decision process. Secondly, to support operational limits and manage collateral constraints before execution. And thirdly, to provide analytics that identify more efficient trading options, such as using Eris futures instead of IRS. One key factor in this new derivative world is that the cost of trading is no longer simply based on the execution price. With margin requirements of cleared and uncleared trades, it is now critical to understand the true cost of collateralizing and holding a trade over its whole life. This includes the cost of using collateral, which can be defined very differently for each different fund, as well as all exchange, internal, and clearing fees. So where does Cassini fit in? Cassini is designed to be integrated into the front office trading lifecycle at the pre-execution stage. It may be used by the portfolio manager as part of modeling the trade, or by the execution trader to ensure best execution. Cassini's full analytics can be accessed directly through our web-based screens or integrated into your existing front office systems via our comprehensive API. So for example, our analytics may be plugged into your existing modeling spreadsheets, bespoke tools, or your OMS. Bringing this depth of data into the front office can add value in multiple ways. The most obvious is by testing proposed new trades using a what-if function. But there are other tools we provide. For example, we can allow modeling of efficient hedge trades, minimizing costs while matching the risk required, and tools to allow intraday management of collateral. However, the service we're talking about today is portfolio optimization. And this is another analytic engine that we provide that can be used to identify futures trades to replace a swap portfolio, thus reducing margin requirements and the associated costs. Let's just look at a couple of these use cases a little closer. So in a what-if scenario, Cassini allows you to see the initial margin impact on the portfolio that will result from adding new trades to the book. Just one example of the detail that Cassini applies to this calculation is that we time slice the holding period of the trade so to evaluate more accurately how initial margin and associated costs change over time. As you can see on the sample bar chart on the screen, this is just illustrating how clearing and broker costs reduce quarter by quarter. One point to make around the initial margin calculation is that we use the models defined and provided by the clearing houses, so that we are using the actual models and data that will also be applied to your end-of-day process. Another element of the what-if scenario is that there are a number of other associated costs and factors to consider. Cassini will determine the most optimal collateral that can be used, and will also check limits that are both implied and defined in your trading and collateral agreements. One of the key features of Cassini is the ability to analyze all alternative ways of clearing or executing trades. This can show comparative costs and identify alternative assets, such as interest rate futures, that may be more cost efficient. Now, coming back to the portfolio optimization model that we are offering in partnership with Eris, the way that this works within the Cassini engines is that we initially load the portfolio of swaps, and we then create a bucketed risk profile out to maturity. Then our optimization engine will run, and that will find the minimum number of futures trades that can replicate that risk profile. And finally, we calculate the saving in initial margin and lifetime cost. So now let me hand you back to Jeff, who will describe how you can access this service via the Eris website.
Thank you, Liam. Accessing the Cassini analysis is easy. You may find instructions on our website at erisfutures.com/optimize. There you will find an overview of the service, instructions on how to submit a portfolio of OTC swaps or an OTC delta ladder, a recording of this webinar, and other resources, including links to a comparison of initial margins of Eris dollar swap futures versus their OTC equivalent. Our free analysis requires you to submit a portfolio of swaps or a granular delta ladder in a standard format. Cassini receives this information and will run your swap portfolio through its analytics. Within 1 to 2 days, you will receive a report identifying the Eris positions that replicates your OTC portfolio, along with the margin savings from the novation exercise. I encourage you to try the service. You'll see the immediate savings from utilizing Eris, and you'll have a report with which you may make the internal case to start using Eris swap futures. In this example, we have 22 OTC transactions compressed into 10 Eris swap futures contracts, reducing initial margins by 47%, and in this case, a reduction of almost $40 million. So you'll see from the analysis, there is an immediate benefit, accretive to income, from a reduction in financing costs. I'll now hand you back to Chris, concluding the webinar.
Thanks, Jeff. Now we'll turn our attention to the questions in queue. We've got a couple. I encourage you to use the questions section to submit any questions you may have. First I'll turn to Jeff. What prompted collaboration between Eris and Cassini?
So while perhaps obvious that a low-margin product like Eris or to produce margin optimization. It's difficult for market participants to make the case without the analysis themselves. And considering the market is strapped for resources, we thought we would provide this service for free to allow users to explore the benefits of using a new product like Eris, saving themselves the trouble and cost of doing it themselves. The analysis will provide users with a tool with which they can argue internally to make the case for Eris.
Thanks. Easy one here for Liam. How many sample portfolios can I submit?
Yeah, hi, there's no limit. Under the auspices of this Eris partnership, we're happy to run as many sample portfolios as you require or are interested in. The Cassini is a fully featured system that can be used by portfolio or risk managers, obviously to guide hedging and trading decisions. So we're happy to provide any assistance there required.
Thanks, Liam. Actually, the next question is for you. What's the turnaround time for receiving the margin analysis once the sample portfolio has been submitted?
So basically, because obviously you're submitting your portfolio into Eris and passing it through our environment, 1 to 2 day turnaround just for admin and communication.
Great, thank you. And this one's for Jeff. What format do you need to upload the portfolio?
It's a simple standard format. You can take, we can take either an Excel file of swaps, start date, end date, size, direction, coupon, or we can take a delta ladder. It's a very simple procedure.
Excellent, thanks. Boy, we're getting lots of real questions here. Is there a maximum number of swaps that can be included in a portfolio for analysis?
Hi, I'll pick that one up. The answer is no. Again, systems are fully scalable, unlimited systems, so you can send any size book. And we can also, just for additional information there, we can also define constraints around optimization if you wish to select or narrow the field of target contracts.
Great. This is another good one about fees, actually, and costs. This will go to Liam. Does the analysis take into account the cost of changing from IRS to an Eris future? Right now, we're talking about margin analytics. This might actually segue nicely to what the rest of your full feature system is. So let you take it from there.
Yeah, well, exactly. So the service that we're offering here, again, in partnership with Eris, is a portfolio optimization and margin reduction service. So it is constrained to identifying futures contracts and identifying the best margin reduction. However, the full Cassini platform models all associated costs, trading costs, fees, etc., that are implied in any kind of trading optimization or what if. So the full platform can build all those factors into the optimization.
Thanks, Liam. This one's for Jeff. If we want to compress, are there dealers willing to make quote-unquote compression markets?
Between Eris and OTC swaps? Yes, there are. And over time, we anticipate more.
How would they, if you could, just elaborate on how would they make those markets? How would they contact their dealer?
So the protocols in Eris allow voice trading. So the procedure is actually fairly simple. Involves requesting a price from a broker. There's no need for trading the OTC swap on a set because typically it'll be past-dated swaps. And there's no need to trade the Eris contract in the central limit order book because it would classify as an exchange for equivalent risk and therefore not eligible to necessarily cross the book. It would simply have to be reported at the end of the day.
Okay, great. Thank you. This one is for Liam. Does this include Euro swap books?
Again, absolutely. Cassini is a full multi-currency, multi-market environment, so it includes the Euro swaps and also includes the Eris futures available on ICE.
Great. Just give me 1 second. We got a long question here. Let's just pare this one down. Just give me a second. So let me summarize this question. Will the service show how closely you replicate DV01? And can the user set constraints? I'm going to give that one to Liam.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Obviously, part of optimizing a portfolio and finding replica contracts is matching the risk profile. So that is something that is fully configurable within Cassini. You can set constraints and tolerances around how closely or how much variation you're willing to accept, and that will affect the number of trades. So you can gain more margin reductions and minimize trades further by accepting maybe a 1 or 2% variation in DV01.
Another one for Liam. This might be the most real questions ever on a webinar. Will Cassini system use Eris standards only, or will the analysis incorporate aged standards? Can you direct to just use the current standards or the on-the-runs?
So yeah, another great question. The answer is absolutely. So part of the configuration of one of these optimization analytics is what is the target universe of contracts, and that can be set to be, in this example, the full universe of off-the-run, on-the-run, ultra-forward, Eris standards, or can be narrowed to be just on-the-run, or to exclude ultra-forward, etc. So it's a very configurable setup.
Okay, great. So we had many questions come down the pipe. We've got a few that we haven't gotten to, but we'll take those offline. That concludes our presentation. If you'd like to get a chance to submit a question, simply contact us at sales@erisfutures.com or direct questions to Liam. You can see his email address there. And we'll email you back promptly. We'll also follow up by sending a replay of today's link. And on behalf of our presenters, I'd like to thank you for joining us. This concludes our webinar session today.